Simon the Pharisee. A Pharisee invited Jesus to have dinner with him. So Jesus went to the Pharisee's home and got ready to eat. When a sinful woman in that town found out that Jesus was there, she brought an expensive bottle of perfume. Then she came and stood behind Jesus. She cried and started washing his feet with her tears and drying them with her hair. The woman kissed his feet and poured the perfume on them. The Pharisee who had invited Jesus saw this and said to himself, "If this man really were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. He would know that she is a sinner." Jesus said to the Pharisee, "Simon, I have something to say to you." "Teacher, what is it?" Simon replied. Jesus told him, 2 people were in debt to a moneylender. One of them owed him 500 silver coins, and the other owed him 50. Since neither of them could pay him back, the moneylender said that they didn't have to pay him anything. Which one of them will like him more? Simon answered, "I suppose it would be the one who had owed him more and didn't have to pay it back." "You are right," Jesus said. He turned toward the woman and said to Simon, "Have you noticed this woman? When I came into your home, you didn't give me any water so I could wash my feet. But she has washed my feet with her tears and dried them with her hair. You didn't greet me with a kiss, but from the time I came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You didn't even pour olive oil on my head, but she has poured expensive perfume on my feet. So I tell you that all her sins are forgiven, and that is why she has shown great love. But anyone who has been forgiven for only a little will show only a little love." Then Jesus said to the woman, "Your sins are forgiven." Some other guests started saying to one another, "Who is this who dares to forgive sins?" But Jesus told the woman, "Because of your faith, you are now saved. May God give you peace." And then 8:3, women who helped Jesus. Soon after this, Jesus was going through towns and villages telling the good news about God's kingdom. His 12 apostles were with him, and so were some women who had been healed of evil spirits and all sorts of diseases. One of the women was Mary Magdalene, who once had 7 demons in her. Joanna, Susanna, and many others had also used what they owned to help Jesus and his disciples. Joanna's husband, Chuza, was one of Herod's officials.
I love this story because it showed how different Jesus was than the Pharisees who were always judging people. And he always made people feel worthy no matter who they were. And by doing so, they changed. Can you imagine if you were a person that everybody loathed and looked down upon and they didn't want to associate with you, and there was one human being that made you feel that you were worthy, that you were loved and cared for, and that someone would want to share the good news with? Can you imagine what difference it would make in your life? I wanted to share with you a story. This is a true story about a woman by the name of Carla Larson. She lives in Lincoln, Nebraska. And she, by day, is a paralegal. And she decided she wanted to earn a little extra money. So 2 days a week she worked for this home health care agency. And what she would do was mainly, she was expected to help people clean their house because they, were getting older and they were having a difficult time. So she had already had 2 short jobs. And then the director of the agency said, "Carla, I have a real tough one for you. I have a man who everybody's quit on. Nobody wants to work in his house. And I know you have a lot of stamina, so I think maybe you can do it. Now, before you go there, I want to make sure that you have a dust mask that you wear over your face because this place is a little time. And instead of the usual beautiful plants, it was like a jungle of weeds. You couldn't even see the front door. I mean, the place was just overgrown with these tall weeds. So she said to herself, okay. So she knocked on the door, and a man by the name of Roger opened it up. He was like, ooh, the stench was unreal. I mean, it was disgusting. And she said to herself, mask or nothing, I need a hazmat outfit. You know, this place is really bad. There was so much trash and newspapers and magazines and stuff. There was just a narrow pathway that you could get through the living room. The kitchen, I mean, there was just trash all over. It hadn't been emptied yet or put outside. It was trash bags all over. And, you know, dishes in the sink that had all had caked on food. You know, you can imagine the place, right? So she said to herself, okay. So she said, all right, let me see what I can do to help you. And so she started, you know, gathering up stuff and piling them. And talked to him a little bit. And he shared his life with her a little. He had been a truck driver. And he had been in a head-on collision. And that's what made it so that he couldn't work anymore. He had a lot of physical disabilities. Plus, he had diabetes. Yes, he was a little overweight. And he was having a lot of physical problems. And kind of depressed. He told her that he had a son and a grandson, but they never came over. Well, she figured that one out right away. Why they didn't want to come over? Whoa, the place had a real, you think skunk smell. Oh, this place was something else. So anyway, she tried to help him. And then the next day that she came, you know, a couple of days went behind, and she went over there, and she noticed that everything she had piled on one side, it had been transferred over to the other side. So it was still a mess. She was trying to help him out, and he said, I just got the bill from the agency, and it says, I'm paid for a companion. So he said, I don't want you doing any more housework. Let's sit down and you be my companion.
Oh, brother.
So they talked and shared their lives, and he had informed her that not only was he a driver, but he owned a trucking company. And what had happened, he had a partner with the company, and after he had the accident, this partner totally cheated him, got the company away from him, and he was kind of left without anything. And he had had several failed marriages, and his son didn't want to come over anymore, just, you know, just very infrequently. But he had this precious dog that he loved, and the dog lived with him. And then she had left that day after talking to him for 4 hours, because that's what she worked for. And the dog somehow got out and was killed. He went into the street and was killed. And she was just devastated when she heard about it. The next time she was there, and she said, oh, I felt just awful. Because, I mean, that had been his one and only true companion. And so after talking to him for a half an hour, that's what she'd do. She'd sit down and talk to him for a half an hour, and then the rest of the time she'd help clean up. And she noticed that things were changing, that he was not leaving the place in a mess for her, that he was actually doing some things himself. And so at least he rinsed the dishes. That makes it a lot easier, right? And then he was taking out the trash and put it in the trash can. And then the following day that she came, she heard this barking, and she thought, where did that come from? I thought his dog had been killed. What had happened, the son and the grandson had come over to see the dad, and they heard what had happened. They felt so bad, they got him another dog, and they called him Jack. He was a Jack Russell Terrier. And things were going better. He was feeling better. And he said that his son was starting to come over more often. Well, yeah, it didn't stink so much. Anyway, and he had also shared with her that he had forgiven his business partner, he had forgiven his ex-wife, he had forgiven his son for not wanting to spend that much time with him, and he just finally was at peace with himself. After saying that, he started getting very, very dizzy, and she got scared. And so she called 911. And when the paramedics arrived, they said his sugar level was just off the roof. It was just really terrible. So he was brought to a hospital. He then was put in a nursing home for a couple of weeks. They said that he couldn't come home unless there would be somebody that could be there at least 2 days a week to kind of see that he was okay. Well, guess who? Carla was there for him. And in this story, what I wanted to share with you is how she could be open and forgive him for all his stinkiness and sloppiness, and that he was able to forgive all the people who had done him in. So what had happened is that there was a sense of togetherness and blessing. And especially people that are not respected by others, which he obviously wasn't. It just shows how one kind person can make a big difference. The last story I'd like to share with you is one of my own. I had a student who was very suddenly put into my class. This was when I was teaching in Covina, at a special school. And the teacher had no use for the mother of this young boy. The mother had been a drug addict, and the boy had been taken away from her. And then eventually he was given back. But she was, tattooed all over. I'm excited, isn't it? She was just tattooed all over the place, She was kind of hardened, kind of tough looking. And he had no respect for her. And so anytime they had a meeting or anything like that, she never showed up. And so he said, oh, she's a good for nothing. I'm glad you have him because I can't deal with that mother of his. She's a no good whatever. And it just happened to be that he was having what is called an IEP meeting, where you've set yearly goals for a student in special ed. And so I called her, and we had a nice conversation. I said, your boy's now in my class. And she said, yes, I know. I'm very happy about it. And I said, I would like you to help me write his IEP, that we can do this together. Because you know him better than I do. What do you see a year from now of what you would like your boy to do? And she said, no one has ever done this to me before. No one has ever, asked for my opinion or input. I thought, well, gosh, it's your kid. You should have an input. So over the phone, we talked and we shared what she wanted to have him do and what she thought would be reasonable. And so I said, well, his IEP meeting will be on whatever day it was. And I said, do you need a ride or anything like that? Because she had told me that she didn't have a car. And she said, oh no, I've already made arrangements with my sister that she will take me so I can have a ride to school. I said, oh, wonderful. So the day of the IEP meeting was there, and the former teacher said, oh, she'll never show up. She's like a worthless person. She'll never show up. I said, well, we'll see. So guess who was there 15 minutes earlier? The mom. Happy as all get out. Because it's not that I'm so great. It's that I know someone who is great. And his name is Jesus. And he's the one who taught me that if you respect people and treat them with decency, that they will reflect back a whole different interpretation of who they are. When you constantly put a person down and you make them feel really low, they kind of act that way, don't they? But when you show them a little respect and say, the God who created me is the God that also created her. When you do that, you will see a change in their behavior. And so there she was, and I'd hate to tell you how shocked that other teacher was. Oh, she'll never show up. Oh, yes, she did. And not only did she show up, but she was very involved in the whole process of putting together the IEP for this student. She became a changed person. All it takes is just one person to treat someone with respect, and then they start looking at themselves differently. This is what Jesus really taught me. And so I titled my message, Following the forgiven. Because, again, so many of the people that were followers of Jesus back then in the first century and today are people who really feel that they need to be forgiven, but don't feel that they have been. And once they feel forgiven, their whole life changes. And that's really what we're about, aren't we? Jesus taught us how to treat another human being. And in doing so, we will bless their lives and they will truly change. Amen. Amen.